In today's video, we continue on with our NHL offseason plan series. We're now near the top of the league, and we're looking at the 6th-ranked team from the regular season, the Los Angeles Kings. They've made the playoffs for quite a stretch of years in a row now, but unable to get out of the first round. What should we expect from them in terms of free agency, trades, the draft, etc., to make this team better for next year? Will they land a big fish in free agency? They're rumored to be in the mix. We'll discuss the Kings offseason coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have the Los Angeles Kings on the agenda here today as we continue on with our NHL offseason plan series. We're only got a few teams left. We're in and out now at the top of the league now that we've had a chance to double back and do the Edmonton Oilers and the Florida Panthers now that the Stanley Cup final is complete and we have our league champions for the second straight year, the Florida Panthers. So the Kings, as we talked about here, have had some really good regular seasons. This past year, they were a really solid team. They thought this was the year they could get over the hump. And obviously, there's a clear gap right now in the Western Conference between the Edmonton Oilers and I think just about every other high-ranking playoff team. And the Kings they fell victim to the Oilers for the 4th straight year in the playoffs. I think they're probably hoping for a different matchup next year, but I wouldn't be shocked if they kind of build this team and make decisions around how they think they can overcome the Oilers, because unfortunately the way the playoff format is, without changing it, there's a decent chance it could happen again next year, but we'll see. We're going to recap last year as a team and individually with the top players on the team, look at how the team's changed, look at their obviously expiring contracts and what questions are we facing this offseason that we need to figure out answers to, or draft, free agency, trades. What are they going to do? Let's take a look. Let's start by recapping last year where the Kings finished with 105 points, 48, 25, and 9, ended up meeting the Edmonton Oilers in that 2-3 spot in the Western Conference Pacific Division playoff matchup. And after a strong year, like I said, they unfortunately fall victim to the Oilers. They win the first 2 games, and then they lose 4 consecutive games. The regular season result was a little bit better than the year previous, where they had 99 points and 44 wins. So they won 4 more games, they had 6 more points. Overall, it was definitely a bit of a small improvement year over year in that sense. Goals for, they scored 249 goals, 14th best in the league, only allowing 203, which was number 2. So they have a really strong defensive team. They got good goaltending this year, and defensively, like I said, they're one of the top teams in the NHL. So looking at last year's results, they scored 7 goals fewer. They went from 256 to 249, so that was down just a little bit. Goals against was really good last year as well. They've been a good defensive team for a while. Went from 215 to 203, so that was an improvement by 12. So overall, they're +5 ahead where they were last year. Nothing too crazy. On the power play, as much as they were good defensively, obviously the offensive numbers could improve. 17.9% in the power play, 27th best in the league. Not really good enough, especially if you're going to be a contending team. The penalty kill was really good, 81.4%, which was 8th best. So power play definitely needs to get better. And if they can maintain those defensive numbers and score a little bit more, they could definitely be a more dangerous team for sure. Individually, breaking things down, looking at their goalies, like I said, great results from Darcy Kuemper. Phenomenal bounce-back season after some downtime in Washington after signing there as a free agent. Kuemper, of course, came over in the Pierre-Luc Dubois trade, which was looked upon as a swap of bad contracts, if you will. And both players certainly improved. Kuemper probably, I think, improved more than Dubois, but Dubois had a much better season and is on the upswing as well. So both contracts are looking better now than they were before the trade, for sure. You don't often see that working out for both sides, especially in that type of trade. But Kuemper had a record of 31, 11, and 7, 2.02 goals against, and a .922 save percentage. Really solid. David Rittich, his backup, had a record of 16, 14, and 2, a .284 goals against, and an .887 save percentage. That's not quite good enough, and there's certainly some debate if he's going to be back. On the individual scoring leaders, they were led by Adrian Kempe, 73 points. Veteran captain Anze Kopitar, 67 points. Kevin Fiala with 60, and Quentin Byfield with 54. Near the deadline, they made some moves. They added Andrei Kuzmenko. Kuzmenko was a nice find. Even though they didn't do a lot at the deadline, Kuzmenko coming in actually found a good spot there. Be curious to see what they decide with him because he is a UFA, and we'll discuss him a little bit later here. But that was a nice pickup. Like I said, they went to the playoffs. They lost in round one, ultimately to the Oilers. Yet again, GM Rob Blake has departed the team as well. He was on an expiring contract. There was a lot of speculation if he was going to re-sign. Did the Kings want him back? Did he want to be back? And they were announced as mutually parting ways. I believe, all in all, that the Kings were believed to be considering making a change, and there was some speculation that Blake thought that maybe they wanted to go in a new direction, and he maybe thought it was time to kind of move along. Regardless of what happened, mutually parted ways. He's out. Ken Holland, the veteran, comes back into the mix after a brief time away from being in management, working for the league, and is back at being a GM again. So Ken Holland hired as GM. The coaching staff remains. The Jim Hiller challenge, if you will, in that third game against the Oilers in the first round is going to go down as one of the worst challenges ever. And that really, in my opinion, it really turned the series. It gave Edmonton life. Not only did the goal count, but then they get a subsequent power play where they scored again, and that really flipped the series, in my opinion. That challenge for goalie interference, when I thought there was no chance of it. Looking at the replays, I'm not really sure why that was made. I understand that they have video coaches and they relay information onto them, and they sometimes give them a lot of leeway in making those decisions. But at the end of the day, the head coach has the ability to make the final call. They have iPads on the bench, so it's not like he couldn't look at it himself at all. It's not like he's going in blind, relying on somebody else. And they made that decision. And I honestly thought, even though he had a good regular season, after, I guess we were looking at, a season and a half or whatever it was, him being there, I honestly thought they might go in a new direction, but they chose not to. So he's back, and his coaching staff remains with him. The other thing I thought wasn't great about Hiller's performance, if you will, in the playoffs was how he deployed his players. I really thought that they needed to rely more on their bottom six, and obviously he didn't trust them to be relied upon enough, and maybe that's on the team to make the bottom part of their lineup better. But I think that's, even though the Oilers, when it looks to how they stacked up against the Panthers in the final, it looked like the Panthers' depth was better, and that made a large part of the difference here. But early on throughout the first three rounds, the Oilers' depth were winning a lot of battles, scoring a lot of goals. They were outperforming the depth of all the other teams they played against, and they were distributing the minutes pretty even, and the Kings weren't. And I just think they were running out of gas with their top guys because they were overplayed. So, in all honesty, like I said, I thought Hiller was part of the problem, but obviously they still believe in him. I do wonder what kind of rope or whatever he'll have this year. If they have another first round exit, I wouldn't be shocked if we see a change, but for right now, he's the coach. Going into the offseason, they have cap space of $21.7 million, and they have 21 roster spots theoretically filled. A few of those are contracts that could either be moved to the minors or whatnot. They're not all locks, if you will. Looking at their expiring contracts, though, they only have one RFA, and that's Alex Laferriere. Laferriere has been a pretty good player for them. He's going to get signed. There's no doubt he'll have a role in this team, some capacity for sure. On the UFA side, you've got David Riddick, Vladislav Gavrikov, Trevor Lewis, Tanner Jeannot, and Andrei Kuzmenko. Now, like I said, there's been some talk that Riddick may not be back. I think Lewis is either heading into retirement or won't be. He's probably not going to be back. Gavrikov, they know they wanted him back, but right now he's not signed as of the recording of this video. Now, of course, it might be a day or two before this hits YouTube. Maybe something will change, but as I'm recording this, Gavrikov is not signed, and from what we've heard, it sounds like there's a good gap and that he may not get signed. He may hit market on July 1. Tanner Jeannot, I think there's a better chance he signs. I think he'd be a cheaper signing. And then Kuzmenko, I really don't know how to wager on that one, but I know that they have to have some interest to bring him back because he played well, and it's going to probably boil down to negotiations. There are players eligible for contract extensions as well, including Adrian Kempe and Anze Kopitar, both who will be entering the final year of their deals. There's a lot of belief, though, that Kempe probably would be a player that they'll get done. I know Ken Holland made mention and he'd like to talk to Kopitar about extending, and we'll get into his future here a little bit as well, but they are eligible, as well as some younger players like Akil Thomas, Jordan Spence, and Brant Clark, or a little bit less urgent, if you will, to get extensions done on those guys. So the top questions and top things to figure out for this team in this offseason, for one, is the future of Kopitar. I put that right at the forefront because there's belief from John Hoven, a well-connected reporter for the Kings, who says that he's got all the information to believe that this is going to be the last year of Anze Kopitar, that he's likely heading into retirement after this, obviously getting into his later 30s, accomplished a lot. He's got cups under his name. He's got all the personal accolades. He believes Kopitar is going to retire. Now, that could turn out to be wrong. I know Holland made mention he wants to talk to him and see if he can extend him a couple more years or whatever, but the belief is that Kopitar might be done. So this might be a big year for LA to try to win one last time with their captain in the mix. So we'll see. Obviously, they got to figure out their goaltending. Kumper's under contract. Can he repeat what he did last year? That's going to be a big question. And, realistically, you would think that, he should be able to, or at least be close. With largely the same team in front of them. But they definitely need to go into probably into free agency, or are they going to go with Eric Portillo? I'm not sure if they feel Portillo's ready for full-time duty or what have you, but they have to make a decision on backup goaltending for sure. Like I said, on the D-core, the main one that they have to decide on here is Gavrikov. It sounds like he could be heading to free agency, like I said earlier. If he does not get signed, the belief is that they have a lot of interest in RFA defenseman K-Andre Miller of the New York Rangers, who the Rangers sound like they're pretty keen on trading at this point. So Miller, I wouldn't be shocked to see him be an LA King. And possibly Gavrikov is actually linked to the Rangers. There could be some sort of swap there, even though it's not really a trade. So you could see something like that on the blue line. Obviously, there's in the forward group, there's a lot of speculation that they're going to be a leading contender to land a top free agent in hockey, and that's Mitch Marner, currently of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Marner is by many believed to likely land with one of the Western teams, whether it be the Kings or the Golden Knights. The two teams you hear kind of expected to be right at the forefront of those negotiations and at the forefront of being one of those most likely landing spots, if you will. Obviously, landing a guy like Marner adds a big offensive push. Marner knows the coaches there well. Jim Hiller and DJ Smith both coached in Toronto as assistants together earlier in Marner's career. So we know that Marner knows those guys, and the belief is that he really liked working with them. So there's familiarity and comfort there, which is good. We know Marner wants to go to a market where he can kind of, I think, get not have so much media presence, and that's definitely fair to say. LA is a big market, but it's different. I mean, LA's home to a lot of celebrities, and I think Marner could kind of fly under the radar mark more because he's far from being the biggest name out there, right? And a lot of the Kings hockey players have said that you can kind of live a little bit more of a normal life, if you will, and not be hounded by the paparazzi. And they tend to focus more on the singers and the actors and all the other fame that's around you out there. So whereas a city like Toronto, he's one of the most recognizable figures in sports, and the fan base is beyond rampant. They love their team, but there's obviously every fan base has their crazies, and it sounds like Marner's endured a lot of harassment to some degree. So I think it sounds like he wants to change, and to me, from what we've heard, it sounds like LA would be a really potentially good landing spot for him, especially if Kopitar is going to be, I know he's not a center like Kopitar, but he could kind of bring a new element to that team if Kopitar is going to be in the last year. So we'll see. Obviously, if they need to clear space, because if they end up signing a big ticket to Marner, and depending on what else they do, I think that you could see guys like Trevor Moore as a prime trade candidate. That middle six, $4 million range. He could be a potential guy you see move to create some space if they need it. There's some speculation on that on the right side of the blue line that they probably don't want to have Brant Clark and Jordan Spence both play, eventually play top four roles. You get Drew Doughty. We don't know how long he's going to play, but probably a couple more years. And then, so there's some speculation that Spence is available, that they would prefer to keep Clark, who probably has higher upside. So you could see a Jordan Spence trade. That's a possibility as well. Right now at the draft, they do have the 24th overall selection. They could grab themselves a a decent prospect by the looks of things. Hard to say, probably be a couple of years away, whether it be like a Ben Kendall, Cameron Schmidt, Blake Fiddler. Like, there's some decent prospects that could be had at that level. I mean, it wouldn't be shocking if they trade the pick, if they either will maybe trade down to get more assets, or they could trade up to get a player they really like. There's a combination of things, or maybe they trade the pick straight out for a player they like now. Like I mentioned, K'Andre Miller. I don't know what the asking price will be for him, but maybe that pick is involved in a trade for Miller. That wouldn't be shocking. Maybe that pick in one of their prospects and they get Miller. Like that I can see that happening. So it's like guys like Miller and Marner are like kind of the main players linked to going there that would be new to the team. Obviously, like, guys like obviously Trevor Moore, like I said, could be on his way out. Hard to say. Jordan Spence could be on his way out. And then you've got probably going to get a new backup goalie of some kind, most likely, and whether or not you get extensions for Kempe, or if this is the final year of Kopitar. I'm not sure if we'll get confirmation of that. If Kopitar does not sign an extension this summer, probably going to be an indication that he's leaning towards that, and John Hoven is right, and we'll see where things go. But this could be a very interesting offseason. Like I said, they could have some changes that are fairly significant, and it's kind of difficult to say if it really prepares them better for playoffs or not, but it could certainly be a better regular season team for sure. I mean, that's the knock on Marner. He's a great regular season performer, has struggled to come up with the big moments in the playoffs. Like his playoff stats aren't horrible. If you just look at the points in the games played and you match it up, you're like, oh, it's not that bad. What are you talking about? Yeah, well, most of those points for Marner come in games 1, 2, 3, and 4 when there's no pressure. Well, shouldn't say no pressure, but when the series is not in a clinching situation, the season's not on the line, when the Leafs have been up against the wall in games like 5, 6, or 7, when closeout games or when their season's on the line, that's when he seems to fold, or at least he has in the past. At some point, I expect Mitch to figure out overcoming the adversity in the mental block or whatever it is that causes him to freeze up in those games. But he's yet to do it. So until he does it, it's kind of hard to say for sure that he's going to be able to do it. So are the Kings better off with him or not? Like regular season-wise, yes. And like I said, you need guys like that to get to the regular season, to get through it, and to get to the playoffs in a good spot. So I think Mitch being surrounded by a different crew of guys that are better built for playoffs will help him as well. Because I think part of the issue in Toronto not getting over the hump is I just think a lot of all their top guys seem to be built the same way. And I just think that if you mix them up and put them in different spots, different teams, then you're going to get the same sort of better results. Like look at Florida, who's won back-to-back cups. Like you can't tell me that there's a difference in Barkov and Reinhart compared to like Tkachuk and Bennett. Like completely different types of players, right? Barkov and Reinhart are awesome players. They're strong two-way guys, great offensive skill. Two of the most complete players in the league. But do they play that when they say like that hard physical game, that have that dog in them as they call it, that you don't see that. But Tkachuk and Bennett and Marchand who came along, those guys, they have those qualities, and when you mix it all together, it's a great mix. So that's why I think some of that skill you've seen in Toronto, if it were mixed in with some other guys, it might be better served. And obviously that's something that LA is going to have to keep in mind as well. So we'll see what happens, but it could be a big season or a big off season for the Kings and some big additions. So let me know your thoughts on all the potential moves we might see and what you think they should do in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.